They were what General Marshall called our secret weapon, the best damn kids in the world. Where do we find them? Where do we find such men? And the answer came almost as quickly as I'd asked the question. Where we've always found them in this country, in the farms, the shops, the stores, and the offices. They are the product of the freest society the world has ever known. Ronald Reagan, reflecting on the 40th anniversary of D-Day and his trip to Normandy 40 years ago today. His trip to, not his trip, but 30 years ago.
30 years
on the
ago.
40th anniversary.
Right.
Well, you picked up on that real quick.
Well, I'm pretty good in math. I got those double digits there. All right. All right.
Hard to believe it's been 30 years since he gave those two great speeches on D-Day.
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
And
of course, it was 10 years ago yesterday that he passed away, just
Yes.
as President Bush was going for the 50th or the 60th anniversary. Right. I did it again. It's just the time is flying so fast, I can't believe it. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's his name is over there this year for the 70th anniversary.
I think he's already given his speech, actually. I think probably mostly about him.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else about him?
Not really. He's having a bad week. But let's not talk about him because, you know, today being the 70th anniversary of D-Day, we should probably reflect on that, at least for the first part of the show.
Okay.
This reading an anecdote this morning. I think it was in Mark Stein's D-Day column, and I think it would interest you because, of course, you're familiar with Lord Lovett leading his Scots troops ashore, and then catching up to reinforce the bridge that Major Howard took in the longest day, right?
Yeah.
And of course, aside from their military adventures, the most extraordinary thing was he had a bagpiper, Bill Millen, alongside him. And I don't think I had seen this story before. Lovett says to Millen, "You're going ashore with me, and you're going to stand by my side and play as we go ashore and inland to take the bridge." And Millen says, "Lord Lovett, that's against military protocol." And Lovett says, "British military, we're Scotsmen."
Yes,
so that, you know, that absolutely...
That excused him, gave him the absolution.
We're Scotsmen, and that's, you know, we do things our way.
That's right.
And of course, you can't begin to imagine what these 17-year-old German soldiers must have been thinking as his bagpipe is approaching them. Holy smokes.
Well, it's always good to have the piper on your side because listening to them that closely, you want to kill somebody.
You want to kill somebody. I think that's part of the idea.
I think so.
Yeah.
And scare the bejesus out of the other guys.
Just amazing.
The ladies from hell.
And, oh, you know, I should have got out Ernie Pyle's book, because his D-Day stuff was fantastic. But he was one of the things he talked about, how these guys are going ashore with their guitars strapped to their backs and things like that, you know, because
they knew not.
Most of their stuff, their personal belongings, are going to be left behind and may or may not ever catch up with them.
Right.
And although there is probably no use for a guitar as you're storming Omaha Beach, you know, maybe a couple nights from now, when you're having a cup of coffee,
you're sitting around the campfire,
you'd want to sing some old home songs.
Yep. You know, they knew they were in for something, but they weren't sure exactly what they were in for. And you know, it also depended very much on which beachhead you landed on, what your experience was.
Absolutely.
You know, the Brits encountered a little bit, and as you went down further south, the battles became more and more intense.
The Omaha, of course, was the worst, and part of that was because it really didn't get softened up enough before. Utah may have worked better because they landed in the wrong place.
I never understood that when they sent the bombers in to soften them up, why they flew from west to east. It would have been logistically smarter, I think, to fly north to south. You've got a small corridor you have to hit in, and you're going to have a better chance of hitting in that narrow corridor when you're flying over the top, as opposed to getting that 10 seconds and beyond. And that's what happened. They dropped most of the bombs beyond because of the cloud cover. They weren't able to hit where they needed to. So by coming across it, going diagonal instead of perpendicular to it, they would have had better results. You're going to have a chance to bomb the whole length of the fortifications.
I'm trying to think. You think of Normandy, but it was they were really approaching from the north, right? The invasion.
Yeah, but when as they bombed, they were cutting across it instead of running with it.
Right.
And they really said that so much of the bombing did nothing on it, particularly on the big gun batteries that were.
Oh, the weather was so lousy. How did they even know where they were?
You're right. That was definitely an advantage on behalf.
Maybe
of the
they
Germans.
thought they were going west to east.
Yeah, maybe. But geez, they had one of the shows they were showing the bombing and just how anything could have survived, regardless of the accuracy.
Right.
It was unbelievable. They had a program I had never seen the other day about the D-Day rehearsal that went askew prior to.
Oh
down on the English
Suffolk
coast
or someplace.
The LSTs that were sunk by the.
I don't think that was released for about 40 years, was it?
No, it was all been.
It was a horrible,
absolutely lost.
Horrible casualties.
Somewhere between 400 and 700 men.
Yeah, when you consider the real thing was like, 3,600 or something?
Yeah.
It was pretty horrible casualties for a rehearsal.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And, and I'm sure because of that, they did things a little differently on the exact day. They improved their communications because on the rehearsal, everybody was on a different frequency and they couldn't communicate well with each other.
That's how you find out what can go wrong.
No, and they did. But I had never seen that. I'd heard stories about it, but they had the program on the other day. And
it's funny.
Fascinating.
I mean, you can only begin to imagine what the logistics of D-Day were. And plus, not just D-Day, but they had to immediately follow with setting up the Mulberry ports so they could land the rest of the stuff. Because all they had was shallow water. So they actually, that was one of the great little noticed accomplishments of the invasion was that they created these concrete artificial ports and kept them underwater until the invasion, and then they raised them and towed them across the channel, and within days they had within a couple of days they had major port work in there.
The number they were kicking about,
they didn't have Cherbourg
was 1.5 million men came through there within 2 weeks. Some incredible number.
Yeah.
Way beyond what the original landing was. How many they brought in, and how is the sheer numbers that they're able to use to overwhelm the Germans, as well as good tactics and logistics. It was just the sheer number that they were throwing in at them. They just kept bringing this stuff and bringing this, and the guy, and who was one of the guys that had was in charge of supply?
Well, Brigadier General Alan Kimball was the second in command for the whole operation.
And where's he from?
Amsterdam, New York. Amsterdam, New York.
The ships and
Did you hear? You weren't on the show Tuesday. Did you hear my anecdote about him? How he had Herb Shuttleworth working for him as a second lieutenant, and then after the war, the second lieutenant is boss of the general.
Yeah. All the stuff they had to maintain. I mean, keeping the fuel up for the tanks to have these.
Right.
You don't see that in the movies. It's just you see the guy doing the fight, but all the stuff behind.
Well, among other things, they ran a pipeline under the channel for the gasoline or diesel or whatever they were using. Yeah. You know, and then kept trying to move it closer to the front because other, you know, as they got farther and farther away from Normandy,
the harder it was to support.
you know, they've got all these tankers going up the road, and yeah, it was tough.
You know, these guys didn't carry everything on their backs. They were getting truckloads of stuff brought in.
But anyway, I guess my point was, you know, they have months and months and months and months. They had really a couple of years to prepare for this invasion from the beginning. But the details have got to be enormous. And you just don't know till you get into the situation. There's always something that comes up that you didn't anticipate, and how do we get around that? And that's when the men on the front come through. Yeah?
That's right, and there's always an attribute that they said turned the war. We had the American officers and generals were able to adapt and think on their feet and weren't committed to that script if it didn't work. They did not have to keep going back to find out what we should do. They adapted, and the Germans always had to keep deferring to somebody higher up, and lots of times by the time the higher ups got it, it's changed anyways, and you're already underwater.
Which is amazing, you know, considering, you know, the German reputation for organization.
That's right.
Yes, the organization they had.
It was organized.
They could probably play a great symphony and never miss a note. Jazz they couldn't handle.
That's right, improvisation. They couldn't do it. Boy.
That was a good analogy. You know, I've been watching the Ken Burns jazz series. Did you ever see that?
No.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wynton Marsalis is the principal commentator, and this guy knows music. I mean, he knows.
He knows all that jazz.
Yeah. But you know who the pioneers were, what this guy did to change things, and how this, you know, how the different cultures living together worked this out. So, you know, so far I've traced it into the. We finally got up to Glenn Miller, I guess. So we're still pre-war. I don't know if it goes much farther than that, but Louis Armstrong created everything. Just amazing. Love that man. Anyway. On the 20th anniversary, which would have been in 1964, right? Eisenhower did a special with Walter Cronkite. Of course, Walter Cronkite went ashore.
Yes, he was.
I think on the first wave as a reporter. And so the two of them went back to Normandy and walked the beaches, and you know, Eisenhower's telling his story. I don't think that thing has been shown since. It was a magnificent documentary, and I've never seen it on any of the anniversaries. But Eisenhower was talking about Omaha Beach, and you know how you know they got pinned down fiercely, and Eisenhower said what really turned the tide was individual guys just saying, I'm not going to die here on the beach. And they, on their own, started moving forward, and the others followed them, and you know, once they cleared the guns, then the day was won. But it was, all organization broke down in the first wave. You're 18-year-old Richard Dantini. You're in the very first wave. The first guy off your landing craft is the lieutenant in charge of your platoon, and he gets killed before he steps off the landing craft. Within half an hour, within 10 minutes, all the officers were dead, and within half an hour, most of the sergeants and the non-coms as well. So these guys are on their own trying to make it to the beach. I think it took them like an hour to get from the landing craft to the shore. You know, hiding behind obstacles and dodging mines and getting shot 4 times. And you know, he goes to help one of his friends, and the friend and the medic are sliced in half by machine gun fire. You're 18 freaking years old.
Yeah, they are. Oh
man.
You know, and you know, when you see this and you read about it, it's amazing they got as far as they did as quick as they did in the long run. I mean, because you know, by mid-afternoon, it's basically over.
Yeah.
It's over. You know.
By the time they were having supper on Utah Beach, the guns were in the distance.
Yeah.
Wow. Down at the D-Day Museum in New Orleans, I think they call it the World War II Museum now, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was called the D-Day Museum when I was there.
And what did they make down in Louisiana?
Well, they made
important.
They made the Higgins boats, the landing craft that made all these things possible, both the invasions in Europe and North Africa and the South Pacific.
That's right.
They must have, you know, I've never read about this, but they must have been shipping those boats from continent to continent, weren't they?
Yeah, they didn't drive them across. No, they shipped them.
Wow. Anyway, they have, one of the exhibits there is a recreation of a German bunker at Omaha Beach, you know, the one in the movie, really. Yeah. The invasion forces right in front of me. 6,000 ships. They don't have that many ships. Well, they're coming right at me. Dun, 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 dun. God.
You see,
that may be my favorite moment in movie history, when the fog lifts.
And that's all you see. You could walk from Normandy to England stepping on the ships.
Right.
There's so many.
The fog lifts in just that moment, and the whole fleet is shown there, and the orchestra plays. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
This poor guy, this poor German. Anyway, you know, I'm wandering around this amazing exhibit, you know, and you get to look out through the bunker down at the tableau of the beach, and all of a sudden there's this real old guy standing next to me, and he says, "You wouldn't believe the sound that day, the noise." And I realize I'm standing next to one of these
somebody
guys
who knows what the noise sounded.
Knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Just, you know, thousands of, you know, batteries going off, you know, thousands of small arms fire.
Yeah. You ever, you know, you ever go to a, you know, 19-gun salute next to a Navy ship and hear what one of those guns going off sounds like?
Pretty good, pretty good. You know, and that's why you see in the movie these guys have got the earphones. There's not earphones there, ear mufflers they got on because of the concussion from those things. Can you imagine one of those battleships and they're firing, you know, their 9 guns off one after another? What that rock and roll was like on the ship, and the sound, you know. The only sound they didn't hear was the one that got them. That's what they always say. You know, you don't hear the bullet that gets you. But they just you know, 4th of July fireworks are nothing.
Nothing.
You know, it's. You know, sometimes I wonder how the servicemen who've been through this type of thing can stand there and listen to the fireworks, because the picture that comes back into their mind when they heard that sort, much worse, going off.
I know a guy who was there on D-Day. A guy you would ordinarily say is happy as a clam and the easiest going guy you'd ever want to meet, right?
Yeah.
Sometime in the 1950s, he's walking with his wife up Market Street after church with his Sunday suit on, and all of a sudden a car backfires, and the wife jumps, and then she turns around and he's not there, and he's flat on his face on the ground hugging the sidewalk.
Memories come back.
Yep.
Memories come back. Well, that Guy Tomlinson, was it?
I'm not mentioning any names.
Okay. Boy, just, you know, and these guys never talked about it.
Nope.
Never spoke about it. You know, the first time I heard bits and pieces was when they had the opening of the longest day down here, and some of the guys were there, and they were talking about this and that, and little side notes, but they never really got into the real deal, what it was like and what they actually went through and what they did, you know.
Then there's these little repercussions, and you don't know, you know, how one thing ripples out to another. Richard Marnell from Amsterdam was a close friend of Rich Dantini. And he had initially heard that Dantini had been killed on Omaha Beach. And he was close to correct, because he had nearly, you know, he was in the hospital for like 18 months afterwards. And he became a one-man, I'm going to march right into Hitler's office and strangle him myself. You know, he
got my friend.
Yeah, you know, ends up with a Distinguished Service Cross, leading a crazy charge, taking out, I don't know, I forget how many pillboxes or whatever. But yeah, you know, one inspires the next guy, I guess.
Yeah.
Just, there's so many guys from here were there. And I got interviewed by the Recorder about D-Day the other day. I was really just rambling, like I'm doing now. And I was trying to explain what it must have been like for the folks back home, because nobody knows where their sons and brothers and boyfriends and husbands are
stationed to start with.
You may know they're in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, you may know they're in the British Isles, but you don't know whether they're on that first ship that comes across. You don't, you know.
You don't know.
You don't know. And it's a long time before the news starts trickling out. I think it was August before the first announcements started coming of the 3 guys from Amsterdam who were killed on D-Day, and certainly a lot more wounded, and it was just held back, you know, for security reasons, obviously. But you know, however important the security reasons may be, the horror of it for the people waiting back home.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and I got just a taste of that in my attic when I found that letter from V-mail from my father to my grandmother. The guys who were waiting to go over, including the ones who went on D-Day, but also the ones who came in the subsequent waves and over the next few weeks, they were silenced. They were not allowed to write home, period. They weren't going to take any chances that anything might slip out, you know. The beach is nice here in
northern France.
Yeah. So they but they allowed them to write one letter once they were aboard ship, and those would be mailed out when the military felt it was appropriate. So my father's letter is basically, he went over on June 19th, a couple of weeks later, and his is basically, well, you know, sorry, you know, I haven't been able to write, and it looks like I won't be able to write for a while, but don't worry, everything's fine, I'm fine. And he refers to a letter my grandmother had written to him, dated June 6, 1944. And unfortunately, I don't have that. My father either didn't keep it, or maybe he never, oh, I know he got it because he's referencing it, but
never.
But I don't know what she said, but I can only imagine, because my grandmother was by nature a worrywart, and is her only son, and you know, she was a young widow, and her husband had been in the First World War.
You know, you can see from the letters that were in the PX that were compiled that the guys, I think some of them worked really hard to give you a hint where they might be.
Oh,
without,
yeah.
You had to kind of read between the lines, and you say, "Oh, yeah, that's where he is." Yeah, of course, the letters are very positive. The guys didn't want anybody to worry, but you could kind of get an idea after you read a few of them.
Well, the beautiful one was the two guys who were in Italy. And one of them apparently was able to say where he was. They said, "I saw Mount Vesuvius," or something like that.
Yeah, slipped it in.
And the other guy says, "I can't say where I am. I ran into guy number one the
other day." They got their point across.
Got the point across.
That's right. That's right. But there were guys who were responsible for reading these things and redacting things that should not be included. I mean, there was real censorship going on, and I think the guys tried real hard to self-censor what they wrote rather than have somebody else decide for them what they were going to let through in there. It also shows you what a slow world it was then, because you didn't expect that instantaneous piece of information. Now, just in normal life, you got information slowly, and this certainly exacerbated sometimes months, and that certainly was the way it was there. That was a great posting you put on Facebook with the front page of the recorder, and what got my attention is how many articles there were talking about this. I think now the news agencies get all this information put out and they put it all in one condensed piece. Here, I mean, they had every little bit and piece was there with the pictures and the numbers and what was going on, and I mean, there had to be probably 10 different articles on that front page.
And that was just the front page.
Yeah.
And the other thing you really grasp and don't otherwise appreciate unless you're looking at these front pages is how fast history was moving. Because the D-Day invasion is obviously the banner headline across the top, but meanwhile over here the troops just passed through Rome and are heading into northern Italy. They captured Rome the day before. And on and on and on. And what's going on in the Pacific and what's going on the Russian front. And, holy moly.
Yeah, there's lots going on, and the papers try to include it, and how difficult it must have been to be putting all this stuff in, printing out, and boom, you're starting right away with the next edition.
Right.
Oh, it had to have been, such a meat market at the recorder when they're doing this. I mean, they're just grinding this stuff out and getting reports in, and somebody typing it up here, and then they had to do it over here, and I just got this bulletin in, and we want to include this, and it had to be a real madhouse. And then you multiply that by how many papers were across the country. Were doing the same thing.
And they all got the local touch. What's this guy doing, or what's our National Guard troop doing? And now move ahead to the first Gulf War. I'm going to go a couple wars ahead here. My friend Andy Budka, who then I think was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines, and got a Bronze Star for designing the Marine invasion of Kuwait.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. He showed it to me on a napkin over on the south side one day. Here's how we got around another. Okay. Anyway, Schwarzkopf liked them. So it's like the first day of the invasion. So he's in Kuwait, probably with the Marine commanding general at the time, I think, and they're in a foxhole. And they have a satellite phone there, and the satellite phone rings from Washington, and it's his wife. They were trying to adopt a baby, and the thing fell through, and she wanted to talk about with him. He says, "So okay, but but there's shells flying over my head right now." They were literally under fire, and he's talking to his wife. And of course, that was an incredible story when he tells it to me, and. And then we get ahead to, you know, Afghanistan, and they've all got, all these guys have got Skype on their personal computers and their handout. And at one point, this is one of my clients is talking to his family, and then there's gunfire. And he says, "Excuse me," and he disappears. And meanwhile, the connection is open, and the battle is actually going on in the background. You know, and they finally comes back, and you know, so okay, everything's all clear now. Holy moly!
Yeah,
that's a lot different from waiting 6 months to.
That's right. That's right. You know, and the way that they could develop and wage the war and these campaigns was certainly different there, because there was not that intense public media dissection of every battle, every you know, because if you look at the war in its totality, you know, the Pacific theater and European theater in North Africa, you know, a couple of those things would have been enough for people to say, that's it, they're going to throw their hands up.
All right, we can't do this.
We can't do this, we should be doing that, we should be home, the boys shouldn't be over there. It would have been a much more difficult war to
I meant to dig up today a piece I wrote a few years ago in the middle of the night when I was probably little insane. It was a mock a mock story about Senator Joseph P. Kennedy. Kennedy gets elected to the Senate after being defeated for the presidency or something like that, because he's run off with Gloria Swanson. It's one of these alternate history things. And he's giving the speech the same as Teddy did. This is the wrong war in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, why are we? You know, did the French bomb Pearl Harbor? He says, why? What are we doing? What are we doing in France? Why are we invading? Why are we killing the people of France when they've done nothing to us? Yeah. Second guessing everything.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly would have a lot more of that, and it would have been a lot more difficult to prosecute that war if that's how things had been. I mean,
yeah, he writes it at the time of the Battle of the Bulge. So yeah. How's that shock and awe working for you now?
Oh.
But it's true. You just substitute a few names, and the argument is exactly the same.
That's right. That's right. Just,
that Hirohito's laughing in his Japans. You're off fighting our allies, the French. And,
you know, that was a difficult situation with the allies in France, and how, you know, as this begins to become more and more successful, how politically they had to keep things balanced. You know, you didn't want to diminish the contribution, regardless of how small it been, of the French army, and the Brits. I mean, they all want to get their credit. They want to get their due for what they've done. And you know, Eisenhower and Roosevelt. And
Eisenhower was
a lot of stuff to try to balance it.
Eisenhower was a brilliant diplomat, at least in dealing with our friends. You know, I don't know how he dealt with the enemies. I don't know, but dealing with the French, he was a brilliant diplomat. And there were a lot of difficult questions involved because they had recognized de Gaulle as the head of the French government in exile, but they didn't want him to do anything. And they start printing French occupation money, and he says, "You've got no right to do that. You're not the French government. I'm the French government." And you know, he had a point. And they didn't want him going ashore and all that. They didn't want him going into Paris.
No, he did.
But he did, and it was one of the great moments in history, for God's sakes. But my father was there when de Gaulle came ashore. De Gaulle's first stop was in Cherbourg, where my father was stationed. And he gave this great speech from the balcony of the city hall.
Your dad?
No, de Gaulle first. Then my dad got up and tried to give one, and they said, no parle l'anglais.
I don't understand.
But you know, de Gaulle was always a very difficult ally, and going, you know, and he's telling me this story, you know, into the 1960s when he was still a difficult ally. But he admired him greatly. He said de Gaulle is first and foremost a Frenchman. He says you have to start with that understanding that he is doing what he thinks needs to be done for the safety and glory of France, and nothing else comes before that. Yeah. And holy crap! I mean, the guy marches down the Champs-Élysées, 6'4" or 5". Huge. The Germans are shooting at, the snipers are shooting at him, and he just ignores it. He ignores it. You know, just raw courage.
There were a program I was watching today. I think they said there were 100 people killed that day when he was marching down there because of the snipers that were taking pot shots, and they weren't sure who the snipers were.
Well, yeah, which side they were on.
That's right.
Oh, sure, because there was plenty of that. Well, one of the, you know, I forget. You know, when we invaded North Africa, there was switching of sides because, like, the admirals and generals who were with Vichy were convinced to switch sides and join the Allied cause, and therefore it really screwed the Free French, who were operating underground. And then our new allies, the former Vichy guys, start rounding up the Free French guys and shooting them. And then you know, one of the guys who was high up in the Vichy government was assassinated, who had switched sides. And it was pretty clear that it was a political thing just to get him out of the way so somebody else would move up. And it was the same thing with de Gaulle. You know, they didn't want de Gaulle anywhere. You know, the guys who switched sides in North Africa did not want de Gaulle as their leader or even as their acquaintance. So it got really, really, really confusing.
And it wasn't, you know, when we think of World War II, you think of, you know, the very distinct groups against each other, but there was that Midland group that were kind of more like a bush than a pine tree. I mean, they were all intermingled in who was supporting who, and it was a tough balancing act, you know, and it was even a tough balancing act among our firm allies, the British, with Montgomery, and whether or not he was going to be the one who was going to lead this and design this and get the credit. There was a lot of blustering going on between who was going to do what. You know, Patton didn't always help the cause.
Yeah, of course he was left out at that point.
They brought him in late, but it's a good thing they brought him in when they did, though.
I think they brought him in at just the right time, don't you?
I think he did. Yeah. They created an army for him, and he took that army and
boom,
got the job done.
See you guys.
Yeah. Hope you can keep up with us.
They couldn't.
No, he outran the fuel a few times.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very complex time, and certainly you don't get that when you're in school.
Somebody's pulling the attorney trick here.
Well, I think she's right on. Pretty good. You know, we forget that it wasn't a clean war.
Yeah, like which of them are?
Never was, right. You know,
which of them are?
Who was on whose side, and how supportive were your allies of every idea that you came up with? It was tough. Ike did have a tough job.
Yeah.
You know, and then you throw the Russians in at the end, and it gets even more complicated. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Only works so far.
That's right. And then you're back to where you started with them.
Eisenhower took a lot of criticism for at the time for stopping the troops from going into Berlin, and you know, in hindsight, he was absolutely right. because he knew that Yalta had already decided that after we take Berlin, yeah, it's great to have the glory of marching into Berlin and hanging Hitler from the lamppost. But he knew that every inch of that ground was going to the Russians. And it was not worth one American life.
No, it's easier to let them start with it than to take it and have them have to take it back. You know, it's easy to stand.
Didn't bother Patton. He went right into Czechoslovakia, and but he did some good things there. He saved the miracle of the white stallions there,
yes,
the Lipinzahner horse.
Lipinzahner stallion.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. But it got hard at the end. They had to be they had to be more precise and exacting of how they finished than what they started. You know, and in some respects it worked out well. Other ways it was tough for some of the folks who got left behind on the wrong side of the
oh my God.
Of the wall. You know.
Well, you know, yeah. I mean, well, it was pretty barbaric on the Eastern Front on both sides. Coming and going,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, each side was there. It was brutal, and the Russians were just as brutal, if not more so, on the Germans, and they went when they went in. And you know, the millions. Sam Mike this morning said in Russia there were 7 million soldiers killed and around 20 million civilians.
Oh yeah.
In World War II.
Yeah, I mean we can't fathom that. Can't fathom that.
No.
And then, after these Russian soldiers had been brutalized in German POW camps, the ones who survived were sent to Siberia because they'd been exposed to Western culture, and Stalin wouldn't have anything of it.
Yeah.
He liquidated them.
Yeah, it went from really bad to worse. Yeah, we can't identify with that kind of situation.
Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, we need to remember when we're dealing with our enemies that there still is barbarism in this world, and that they don't necessarily think the way we do. You know, maybe they're not yearning for peace like we always seem to think.
You know,
we always project our own feelings.
Talked to one of the guys I worked with this morning, and you know, democracy is a cultural thing more than it is a political thing. And to think that we can impose our cultural viewpoints on other people's, history has proved doesn't work. There has to be an evolution within the culture to allow that to be a basis for it and a basis of it to allow it to be successful. You can't, you know, it's this hearts and minds thing. You can't change these people's hearts and minds because that they know what they know, and you just can't say, okay, this is what you got to do. You know, not saying that our belief is that everybody should live in a society that is free and equal and democratic, but there's places that they're not at a position in their cultural development that will allow that to take root and to foster. Even here, what a hard time we have with it.
I understand that argument, and then I look at Japan, and that argument certainly would have been made in Japan in September of 1945, that this country is not ready for democracy. And within 2 years, they had a thriving democracy with women voting, and I mean, it was imposed on them, granted.
But they were at a point in their history, because of what they'd gone through, that had that seemed to be a viable option for them to adapt and thrive with. There's other parts of the world that they just aren't. You just can't say have an election and let it go. You still have these tribal groups.
All right.
You know, these familial groups in these countries that run things, and people just, they're not at the point that we were 200 years ago, 250 years ago. They aren't. And until that happens, you know, we have to tread lightly and carry a big stick. If we're going to get along, you know. And there's been countries that have tried this experiment, and it failed miserably. Some haven't.
One of the brief discussions that was held at the end of the Iraq War was, do we send in a MacArthur as military dictator? But no, they quickly turned everything over to the State Department and had them negotiate with all the little tribal groups and stuff like that. Whereas, I mean, you know, where do you find a MacArthur, first of all? But whereas a MacArthur would have sat everybody down and said, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, your women are voting tomorrow, and they don't have to walk behind the men anymore, and blah, 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 and, you know, after a while we'll figure this out. Yeah. I mean, you know, we've got all these different religious sects over there, SECTS, that, you know, are at war with each other constantly. Well, you know, we're going to, you know,
and part of that,
we're going to impose a solution for you.
And part of that is because over centuries we've drawn these artificial boundary lines within these areas that have forced opposing ideologies and beliefs and tribal groups against each other to live in the same area. You know, you can't, it's not easy to sit down and draw a line and say this is where it's supposed to be, because it doesn't work there. We were fortunate. We had to draw 4 lines here and we were good. But when you're looking at these other countries, bringing people together who, you know, who remember what happened to their grandfather by somebody else's grandfather.
Grandfather, their great. Yeah. I still hear people fighting in the Lithuanian and Polish communities here about the Lithuanian princess who was stolen by the Polish king, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it's still
yeah,
it's stirring them up.
It is. It is.
I think there was not an awful lot of intermingling over the centuries in most of these areas, you know?
Not by choice anyway.
Yeah, but not, yeah, that's what I mean.
Militarily, yes, but by choice, no.
No, every once in a while one group would overrun the other and take over, but yeah.
You know.
I've mentioned this before, I'm just flabbergasted at the number of cultural variations there are in Europe when these people have all lived next door to each other for thousands of years.
And we're developing a society here that causes us to begin to be forced to identify ourselves as this or that. Because every form you fill out, you have to say what you are.
Right.
If we want to be what we were before and what we can be, you just got to ignore it. It doesn't matter what box you tick. And that just reinforces your identity as something other than what we are, all Americans.
Right. Right.
It's half-assed backwards thinking. Okay, they're trying to avoid being something, but doing things that cause that thing you want to avoid to survive and to go on, and it's wrong. You know, and you're right though. And you're.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who you know, has to fill out these forms. You know, what's your race? What do you mean, what's my race? It's, let's see. You know, I got I got an Italian father, a mother who's part black, part Chinese, part Pacific Islander, part Scot. Smart Dutch. You know, I mean, what,
Other.
No. She said no. I'm not any of these things. There's no such thing as race, and that's absolutely the right answer.
They should be on there, and you know, all these forms that the school district has to fill out. You got to categorize everybody.
Right.
You know,
and it's getting harder and harder.
It is. The farther and farther away they get from those things, the less you fit into one of those little categories. But you got to pick a category to be part of. It's ludicrous.
But ultimately, those things are self-defeating because you can't. Thank God you can't slow down the intermingling in this country. That people are moving all the time. They're going to new neighborhoods. They're going to new cities, new states. You know, they're. I mean, how many multiracial families did you know when you were a kid? There's all kinds of them now.
Oh, we didn't know any of them.
Yeah.
There weren't any of them.
Yeah, I mean, one or two. Yeah, yeah. And that.
Well, Tony Orpello, but that's different.
That's right. That's right. When you mix Chinese and Japanese,
yeah.
you come up with Tony Orpello. And Italian.
Yeah, no, somebody's involved. Yeah, yeah. But I think it's just self-defeating to perpetuate those tick boxes.
Yeah.
You don't fit into that. You're an American.
Yeah, I got these beautiful niece and a couple of handsome nephews who are. You know, half Chinese and Irish and Italian, and everything comes out perfectly.
Put spaghetti sauce on rice?
Put spaghetti sauce on the rice, you know,
okay.
Rice and meatballs.
And that becomes Spanish rice, doesn't it?
Well, they're in Southern California, so yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, but, you know, do we even think of no. What the hell does that mean? You know,
I was watching.
We all came from someplace.
The news the other night, and the channel had former Ambassador Bolton on. They were talking about the big international.
He must be pulling his white hair out these days.
I was watching with Marina, and she'll watch the news occasionally with me late at night, and we're there, and they were talking about this country that negotiated this deal, and he kept saying gutter. I'm thinking, does he do? He knows the name of the country. It's either Qatar or Qatar. He's saying gutter. I said, I wonder if he's
Qatar.
Gutter is what he was saying.
No, I know, but I'm trying to think what he's saying.
Yeah. Qatar.
Yeah.
Or Qatar.
Qatar.
But not gutter. You know, he kept saying this. You know, I'm thinking, I think he knows, and he just.
You think he's doing it on purpose?
Oh, he had to be. I mean, this guy is pretty bright and pretty astute of everything he was talking about. We kept calling him gutter. All right. Well, that's another Backyard chick. I'm a gutter guy. What nationality we are. But, you know, these forms that Misha has to fill out for school, you know, for these programs, you gotta tick off what you are, you know. If these are real honest programs open to all, it shouldn't matter what box get ticked. Well, most of the times it does matter what box you tick off on those things. You know? When they were talking about the invasion the other day and how far inland they were going, you know, and this thing, I'm thinking, geez, that's like from Amsterdam to Schenectady. Schenectady to Albany. You know, and the length of time that some of those campaigns went, how long it took the Brits to get the cons, and that was supposed to be the first day objective.
Right.
And
but they stopped for tea.
Yeah, Monty. Yeah. And they said that was the most bombed city in the war.
Oh, it had to be.
They couldn't get them out. They were just, and they also said it was per capita the most number of civilians killed. In bombing campaigns. There's, I don't know how many, 10, 15,000 civilians were killed, you know, after the D-Day landing in our attempt to take cons there. You know, just, and you see the picture of the people, you know, leaving the city, and then they got their bags under their arm, they got a cart they're pulling, you know. How far removed we are from that, you know, literally they're running for their lives with the shirt on their back.
Yeah.
You know, and
They multiply that by all over Europe, and let alone at the end where they had to leave wherever they were and go to places unknown.
Yeah. You know, by the time that we were born, 6, 7 years after the war, Europe was getting back on its feet. But can you imagine what it was from 45 to 49 there? What the devastation. We can't. You know, we talk about what happened at the World Trade Tower and the destruction and everything. I mean, this is, you know, 25 countries in Europe all look like that.
Yeah.
You know,
every block.
Every block. You know, they were showing the Blitz. I was watching that, and the next morning, you know, these guys are out with their shovels, shoveling through, and they're picking up the bricks by hand, moving them here. To, you know, how long it took for these cities and these countries and these people to recover from the devastation. You know, it took, you know, 5, 6 years to get it like that, but it took, you know, really a lot longer.
There's one of those post-war movies.
Boy with the green hair?
Well, no, not The Boy with the Green Hair. It's an interesting movie. It's a weird movie, but it's an interesting movie.
Yeah.
No, with Marlene Dietrich in the cabaret in Berlin or something like that. But and Jean Arthur, I think, was in this movie. Anyway, I mean, the outdoor shots were filmed in Berlin, and it was brutal. It was just, it looked like Mahasko after the fire.
Yeah, and the cities were like, it was for miles.
Dresden, nothing.
They're doing a voiceover on a letter that one of the soldiers had written. And he said, you know, the bombing had taken place. We finally got in the city, and he says, the place is devastated. But the cafe's opened real quick. We had a chance to go in. He says, me and my buddy went in there, and we just drank these bottles of wonderful wine, and instilled us our sense of immortality. And we went out and we captured a German platoon. We didn't even think about getting wounded then. We thought we were great, you know. And how many guys went in the battle after tipping a few? That's what they used to do before.
Speaking of cafes, I just saw a wonderful D-Day article this morning. On one side of one of these bridges, there was a little cafe, and it is credited with being the first French home liberated on D-Day, because it was right after midnight. Yeah. And I guess the wife was Alsatian, so she understood German, and she was able to run around and listen in on the German conversations. And she told them she was able to tell the Free French forces where the explosives were to blow up the bridge, and save them. And so anyway, they're like the first liberated, and the guy digs up his 98 bottles of champagne that he had buried when the Germans came, and they you know, they start celebrating the liberation. The little girl in the house was 4 years old at the time. She's still there running the cafe, and no D-Day veteran has ever paid for a drink in the 70 years since then.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
and they're all there today.
Yeah.
You know, cause every year the guys who took the bridge, the few of them that are left are back, and they showed a picture of them today with these old guys coming for another drink.
Yeah.
Wow. But you know, we were talking about, you know, the civilian thing. You take my daughter-in-law's grandparents, Jenna's grandparents. Her grandfather was a mechanic in the Luftwaffe. They were both from East Prussia. Mm-hmm. I don't think they knew each other before the war, but their farms were like 20 miles apart or something like that. Well, the war ends. He's put in a POW camp for a while. He's basically as the war is ending, he's basically walking the same route Jack Blanchfield did. Everybody's going west to hook up with the Americans.
Yeah.
So he surrenders to the Americans. You know, is briefly put in a POW camp, and who was it? Lucius Clay was put in charge of Germany. General Clay. They got pretty well organized quick, and they did their best to get these guys back into civilian life as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. And he was assigned to work on a farm someplace because they had nobody left to harvest the crops, and and everybody was going to starve if they didn't. So he was treated very well, and and had nothing but high praise for the way he was treated by the Americans. But East Prussia was turned over to Poland at the end of the war as part of the Yalta Accords. Yeah. And Eastern Poland went to Russia, and so Prussia was a compensation, right? Yeah. And all the Germans were ethnically cleansed from East Prussia, which was a pretty big territory, relatively speaking. They had no place to go home to. They were two people without a country. And he fortunately had a cousin over here in New York, and he just he proposes to Oma and says, "Marry me. We go to America."
I've got in my grandfather's stuff the Mohawk carpets, Mohasco, big or whatever, depends what time they work. We put on a month.
You have your microphone here someplace?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
All right.
Hope you didn't lose anything good.
You're picking up on mine.
They used to put out a monthly bulletin, pretty slick publication, and people who worked for the carpet mill could write in letters, get information. How come we can't park here, but these guys can park here? And one of the questions was, one of the guys had written in. He says, how do we go about hiring people? How come we've got so many DPs working for us, and yet people from Amsterdam can't get jobs here anymore? Of course, he's referring to the displaced people, the people from Europe that were brought here, and because they had this place there, and they settled here, and you could see, that
the resentment.
The resentment of the townies to those who were.
I can remember when DP was one of the biggest sneers in town. And I'm thinking, what would Jesus say? I mean, these people have nothing.
That's right. That's right. They have nothing.
The people in Amsterdam kept their houses. Holy moly! I mean, I remember as a kid seeing people with the tattoo numbers on their wrists. Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. How come the DPs are getting jobs and we aren't? I gotta dig that out. That article, but
it's a DP.
Yeah. There's always somebody who feels superior to somebody else, or that there are people lesser than they are.
Wow. I say, thank God I'm alive.
That's right. Every country has issues and problems and difficulties. We have bumps in the roads here. We don't have potholes in our country. Everything that we have and what we need, we can solve ourselves. If we put our minds to it and work together, it can be solved. We throw away more than most places ever get.
Yep.
In terms of everything. You have more choices than people could ever imagine. Because of
even when things are bad.
Even when things are bad, absolutely. When things are bad here, they're just not as good as they were before. But since everything is from a relative place, people think it's horrible. You know, having been over in Eastern Europe, I mean, you can see that in many places, people walk down the street, and literally you can see the weight of the world on their shoulders because of circumstance. You know, wake up here every day. You wake up here, and that's a good place to wake up.
And you know, I've seen a lot of Europe. Not a whole lot, but you know, I've been in several different countries, and some better off than others.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been in Zurich, which is probably one of the richest cities on the continent, and yet, you know, you go about 2 blocks from downtown, and the place is covered with graffiti. You think you're in the South Bronx. You know, you know, I saw one of the, I don't know whether it's a university campus or what it was, but you know, I see this really blatantly anti-Semitic demonstration going on and things like that, and despite all the money, I don't sense prosperity. You know, even in a well-disciplined country like you know, like Switzerland, I mean, the effects of this mindless socialism are everywhere.
And socialism does nothing to support social mobility. It does nothing.
It does the opposite.
It does nothing to raise you out of your circumstance, to put you in a position to be in a better circumstance.
Or any other kind of mobility, for that matter. You know, one thing they're always going for is the mass transportation and get rid of the cars. You know, they hate private automobiles unless it's theirs. And if there's anything that has given freedom to the masses in this country, it is the automobile. You can go on vacation wherever the hell you want in this country. Just hop in your car and go there. You want to go in the woods? Go in the woods. You want to go to the beach? You go to the beach. You know, where we, you know.
Yeah.
You want to spin around the town of Root? You spin around the town of Root. It's very nice up there.
Rooting around?
Huh?
Rooting around up there. Rooting around in Root.
Rooting around in Root. Yeah. And you know, you want to drive across the country? Drive across the country. Oh, they're using gasoline. Ooh, we got to save that for what? We have to save that for our mass transit subsidies.
Geez,
yeah. So in Zurich, you know, the public transportation trolleys, they run like every 2 minutes. You know, you get on, but you go where they tell you to go.
You can only go where they're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to go up to the hills from whence cometh my strength, I got a long walk.
Yeah.
Because if you try filling your car with gasoline there, it's going to cost you the week's salary.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even want to know what I paid there. Thank God it's in liters and euros and Swiss francs converted to euro.
Yeah,
don't tell me
how's that
please
working
don't
out
tell me
for
what I just paid. That's
how's that working out for you guys over there?
Yeah.
Jeez. You know.
But you know, you just feel that even in not particularly great places in this country, you don't feel as crowded or as hemmed in or
pressed.
Or pressed.
You know.
Yeah.
You don't.
And you know, that's the other, you know, if anything those people hate, it's suburban sprawl. You know, suburban sprawl liberated millions of people, right? Yeah. They allow people like you and me to have a house with a yard, for God's sakes. You know, where our kids can play.
They're not all row houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got like Britain, it's like everybody has to live in this hemmed-in area. It's all Highland Gardens, but the apartments are half the size and there's no yards at all. Yeah. You know, or parking areas for that. But the parking areas are the size of this porch for 3 cars. And then, you know, particularly if you're on a train, taking the train from London to Yorkshire was amazing, because you think, here is this ancient land of England, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of years old. You know, they're going into the mists of time. People have lived there. And everybody lives in these crammed in little villages, and in between, it's empty. It's miles and miles of absolutely nothing. Occasionally you'll see a 12th century church on a hill, you know, and that's it, or a manor house. You know, but everything else is empty. The whole freaking country is empty, and then they cram everybody into these cities so they can keep control of them.
They need some of the empty spaces to grow their food. You know, there's
no food. I'm telling you, it's empty. When I say empty, I mean empty. I don't mean we're driving through Iowa. I mean we're driving through nothing. Rolling hills, nice. You can, you know, if you're a Roman legion, you can imagine marching over this hill, and it will look exactly the same as it did in, you know, in 50 BC. You know, jeez. What? It's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
But no, we can't. You know, we can't have suburbs. We can't have WalMarts. Did you see the Common Council in New York City?
Yeah.
Voted to not urge Walmart not to donate charity money to New York-based charities, because we know what you're up to. We know what you're up. You're trying to get in here. You're trying to break the unions. Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Let's reject charity. The enemy. Everybody's the enemy. What's the matter with these people? Go coach a Little League team.
Don't do that to the poor kids.
Yeah, it'll all turn into T-ball.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Laura had 2 home runs in T-ball the other day.
Did she?
Yeah.
She can't talk about it, though, because everybody's a winner.
Huh?
Grand slams, home runs with bases loaded.
Oh yeah, grand slam. Well, yes.
Can't talk about that because that makes her more equal than the other kids that didn't hit a grand
Well, that was
slam.
only for that week. Next week it'll be some other kid gets the 2 grand slams. Yeah. So it's whoever bats last.
Yeah, that's right. But they're still tied.
Yeah. And it doesn't even matter how many players you have on your team. The number it's still 10 runs an inning scored by each team.
And you only play 3 innings.
And 2. Yeah.
2. Oh, they're cutting back.
Yeah.
Misha played, it used to be 3 innings.
Well, those games are taking too long, obviously.
Yeah, I guess. Oh.
I gotta say, she's got a well-coached team.
A Welsh coach?
A well-coached team. The head coach is the other grandpa, Steve Porcello, and he does a great job with these kids. He really teaches them the fundamentals of the game, which is all that the T-ball league is supposed to do. You know, you get the ball, you throw to first, or you go to the nearest base, and you can tell the well-coached teams from the parents who are putting in the time.
The daisy pickers.
Yeah, so you know, if it dribbles in front of first base, the kid will pick it up and run to home plate and beat the runner coming in from third, because there's always a runner on
third base.
Once there's been 3 batters.
Because nobody gets out.
Yeah, because nobody gets out. But they do make the plays at first base, and they do make the plays at you know, there's a certain sharpness to it.
Oh, that's good.
It's almost fun to watch. It always is when you. But Laura's at the plate. Such a good kid. Speaking of baseball, we went to the opening of the Mohawk season last night.
I thought they were on the road yesterday for some reason.
No, they opened at home.
And?
We didn't stay to the end. I don't know how the game. Do we know how the game came out?
They got beat 3-2, I believe.
Oh, really? It was 2-2 when we left.
I think it was 3-2. But they're still waiting for the Kentucky players to get in. Though.
That's what I thought. I said, how come I'm not hearing any Kentucky players? Are they playing? They're
still playing down there.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're too good. Yeah, we always have 2 or 3 Kentucky players.
Yep, that's a pipeline.
It's a good pipeline.
Yep, 3-2, right? Yep. Yeah, so
WCSS was broadcasting the game.
I heard coming home from work.
I didn't catch who was. We were only listening to it on the way home, and she was on the phone with somebody most of the way, so I didn't hear who was doing the play-by-play, but it sounded pretty good, actually.
I almost think Rick Morrison is one of the broadcasters. I won't swear to that.
Almost 1,900 fans.
Oh, sure. The place was packed.
It was great last night.
Middle school band.
Yeah, the middle school band was played, and then they had a whole section reserved for them, so they were there for the whole game. It was chilly. They got chilly last night, and that's ultimately why we left, because we weren't really as well prepared as we should have been. But yeah, really good crowd, and they've added seating capacity all over the place.
They got a military deck there now, right?
It's great. It's lower than the party deck, but it's out in right field area, facing the field. So you get it's angled nicely toward home plate, so you get a great view of the whole park from there. And they've got a wheelchair ramp built up to it. So you want to take your aging veteran up there. It's a perfect place to watch. And I don't know, at least at least one night a week, it's free food and free admission for the veterans.
Good.
So I should know these details, but. It looks great, and they've got the Armed Forces flags flying from there with the American flag up high. By the way, that middle school band, now these are pretty young kids.
Yeah, they are.
They played a whale of a national anthem last night.
Yeah.
I was impressed, weren't you, Mayor? Yeah.
I believe the middle school band is under the direction of Maria Battisti.
Oh, is that right? One of John's talented daughters?
Yes, and the other one's at the high school. I forget which is which, but I think Maria's at the middle school.
Grandchildren of Sam Pepp, our occasional comedy contributor.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, it was a nice atmosphere, beautiful evening for baseball, and they were playing Newark, which I think really should be Newark/Arcadia. Or hyphen Arcadia, which is the name of the city they are in.
Is Newark as in New Jersey?
No, Newark, New York.
That's west of here.
Yeah, it's out by Rochester. Yeah.
Is it Newark or Newark? Because in Delaware, it's Newark, Delaware.
Newark?
Newark. That's what they call it, Newark, Delaware. In Jersey,
remind me not to stop there. I think it's Newark up there, because who's there? Bob Rakatowski lives up there, I think, from my class. Yeah. Yeah, it became the newest city in the state when they merged with Arcadia and became Newark, Arcadia. Sounds like a pinball factory in New Jersey, doesn't it? So anyway, I guess the point I was about to make was, both teams had all of 2 days of practice before this game, and I thought they were playing real sharp baseball. I'll tell you. There was an error here, an error there, maybe, but they looked like they've been playing with each other for a long time, and saw couple of spectacular defensive plays.
The local kids on the team this year, Luke Nethaway from Fonda.
Oh, is that right?
He's playing. Yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else local this year or not. No, it's always good to have
one or two guys.
Yeah, one or two local guys that. Yeah. But by the end of the season, the people go regularly know all these guys anyhow. So.
Yeah. It's got to be amazing for a team coming from somewhere other than here to walk into that spectacular ballpark with its new turf field and see 2,000 people on a Thursday.
That's right. Some of these teams don't play before 2,000 people in a season.
The line for the French fries was freaking inning and a half long for most of the game. Wow.
They had good fries here?
Huh?
Are the French fries good?
The French fries at Shuttleworth Park are the best I've ever had.
Are they gluten-free? Or is there no gluten in French fries?
There shouldn't be any gluten in the French fries, depending on what's in the oil. So I would say they didn't bother me at all.
Okay.
So I would say they are, and of course I smothered them with cheese. That's an extra 50 cents, but well worth it. Nacho cheese. Yeah.
Wow, that was good.
Yeah, I got to see a lot of nice people as usual. Yeah. Got criticized by Dave Hughes for not answering our phone. And so they got, the phone at the radio station it's not rolling over when it gets a busy signal, which it always did before.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm talking to somebody and then I just hang up the phone, it stays locked out for people calling in, which we learned, but
well, you can call in this week.
Yeah.
We'll answer this phone call.
Yeah. But, is that the right time?
It's 11:33.
That's about right.
Yeah.
That's a big bug. Yeah.
Big.
History happening so quickly as it did in the 1940s. You know, the 70th anniversary of the D-Day celebration is a big event. But what's not often remembered, unless you read my book, is that shortly after D-Day, a similar sized fleet sailed from Hawaii to Saipan.
Yeah.
So the anniversary of the Saipan invasion and the subsequent taking of that, which has a lot of local interest, is coming up
kind of gets lost.
Quickly.
It gets lost.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you know, on Tuesday, I read excerpts from my chapter on D-Day. Mm-hmm. And you weren't there, so I saved the best part for last. Would you do us the honor of reading your grandfather's D-Day passage?
Sure.
All right. It's marked.
Oh, it's marked. It's marked.
I think it starts on the right-hand side, if I remember somewhere in
right here. This was written on the evening of June 6th by Guy Murdoch about the gentlemen from Dutch Hill who were part of the United PX, the Bigelow Weaver Sanford Soccer Club. Tuesday, June 6, 1944, will go down in history as D-Day. Owing to the 5-hour difference in our time from Greenwich time, we here in Amsterdam learned of the invasion of Normandy about 6 a.m. this morning. On the way to work, we noticed that some of our neighbors were already putting up their flags. And on arrival at the office, everyone asked the same question: have you heard the news? A few minutes later, I learned that a small radio was in operation in one of the large nearby offices. Little attention was being given to the regular business as reports were continuously given of the progress of the landings on the beaches, the size and the strength of the naval armada, the landing craft, the opposition, the terrific bombardment of the defenses, the details of the beaches, and the difficulty to be overcome, and the excited tones of the commentators all created an atmosphere of awe and wonder that nothing else on earth could have done. The girls around the radio stood tense and hopeful, drinking in every word, serious and awe-stricken, and all had the same question on their minds: is he in it? Husbands and brothers of some were in it, but no one knew it then. Been about an hour of this, and then to work. The radio was turned down, but the girl at the particular desk turned it up when official announcements were made. The invasion was on, D-Day at last, long expected and waited for, the day we longed to hear about yet dreaded. You people really know about D-Day. We do not. For many of you have known other D-Days, although they were not designated as such. In New Guinea, at Port Moresby, Buna, Ley, Solomon and the Solomons, at Guadalcanal, Bougainville, in New Britain in Rabaul, in Cape Gloucester, in the Gilbert Islands at Makin and Tarawa, and in the Marshalls at Kawajin and Anahuac. There were days that were D-Days to many of you. In North Africa, Casablanca, Rabat, Algiers, Oran, Boug, Philippeville, Bizerte, and Cape Bon had many days which those of you who were there did not have any distinctive letter that was known to the world. Then Sicily came, certain days at Cape Pareso, Camiso, Mazarine, Palermo, Messina, and many other places. Then on to Italy, one day at Salerno, Naples, Osino, Anzio, Rome, and on to Florence and Piazza. In India, you were going over the big hump of the Himalayas to China, every trip designated by a question mark. And so the days go on, marked by the same code or other, but each one by itself, the day. What about D-Day in Amsterdam? Just a job to do, maybe a loom to fix, or some weaving to do, or finishing, or maybe just looking at things and saying yes, you got them, or no, they're not good enough. Through our factories here, examining cotton and duck, miles of it, in the plant in Rockton. At the lower mill, more duck, and as we were headed over the tracks to the place where the processing plant is located, we halted. Long freight trains carrying strange cargoes. Some things covered up, others not, but it gave me a thrill to see them thunder past, for they were going out to you. These were the things that helped to bring about D-Day, and we felt like saluting as he hurried by. To processing department down by the river to see that tarpaulin cloth was waterproofed or fireproofed. And down the river came a fleet of LSTs, and we wish we could have delivered them to their destination. From there to Harrower's and the blanket mill, where things really happen to keep you comfortable. Then back to the tarpaulin department, where they are completed and shipped. Sometimes we think we do deal of traveling, but carry no pack, and we're not disturbed. Amsterdam used to be a quiet and peaceful place, engaged mainly in making carpets and rugs. It is still peaceful, but has many new engagements with you fellows out there. More radio news and reports are very encouraging. Truly, it is a great team. On the way home, I noticed, as I have often done, a little gray house on the corner. In the window, there's a service flag with 4 stars. 3 sons and a son-in-law from that house. August 7th, 1942 was the first D-Day for that particular home, when Jack went ashore in Guadalcanal with the Marines. And he has had many similar days in other places and is still out there. He must have used up all the letters in the alphabet by this time. Then Dickie on his D-Day on June 6th in Normandy, and so did the little gray house in the corner. Bucky is still on this side and is ready. The son-in-law is also here. A quiet little house of gray on the corner, and the number is 435 Locust Ave. The lady of the house is Mrs. Geib. God bless her. And the music from the radio on the evening of D-Day, as I heard it, was "Good night, wherever you are." This was D-Day in Amsterdam. Tomorrow will be D-Day +1.
Pure poetry. It's such a beautiful contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary going on simultaneously.
Absolutely. So many of the ordinary were thinking of what the extraordinary was happening. Yeah. A lot of great folks from here were over there.
Yep.
And this is where you find such...
And he really makes the point. That was D-Day in Normandy. Every day you went into battle was D-Day for you.
That's right. That's right.
Wherever you were. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote some good stuff.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Why the heck did he stick himself in an office when he could have been writing the great books of the century?
I don't know. He was it's interesting too, thinking back, he was always very critical of how people wrote and whether or not what they wanted to say was what they wrote. And for somebody from the other side coming here, I always thought it was interesting to be that critical of writing. Now, that's not a whole lot different than what we got going through school. I mean, the nuns were pretty particular about you have to write it so you're saying what you wanted to say.
God bless them.
God bless them. Everyone. Yep. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see on the news tonight what portion of the news is devoted to this. Whether it's going to get a quick gloss, because they did some lead up yesterday to it, and go on to spend time about some fire at some house on Dean Street in some little town, or somebody who's posted some cute little thing of their daughter on Facebook, you know, as being part of the news.
CBS had some good clips from yesterday that I was watching this morning. But then they had Cronkite.
Yeah, they had them.
They had them.
They don't got them. Not now. It's interesting. On Monday and Tuesday when I don't work, I flip around to the news, to all of the major channels at 6:30 to see how things are being covered. The rest of the week I can't because we have to watch Channel 10 at the house is where I work. That's their channel for the news.
Whose rule is that?
The guys' rules.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got one guy there. Boom, 6 o'clock, news comes on. We sit there and watch Channel 10 local news, and then we watch national news there. Now, there is a little tail on that, I think, and that is that right after the news on Channel 10 comes Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, and he really likes that show.
Oh, wow.
So it might be a setup, but that's the channel we watch.
That's a good setup.
But when I'm home, I flip around to see, you know, what order, because the networks are pretty synced on what the order is, but their perspective is all over the map. What becomes important part of that right. particular story, and I think it shows that they no longer report the news, they politicize the news, they slant the news, and they either make it longer or shorter.
Yeah, they freeze out the real news.
Yeah, and you have to watch it all different ones to really be able to filter what the point is, and to allow you to make up your own mind without being swayed by how they're tipping the pot that particular day. So, you know, this whole exchange of prisoners is, I think, a good example.
Well, I know what the lead stories are going to be: the eloquence of Obama at Normandy, and how he's gotten over the little bump in the road caused by his complete and total incompetence.
Okay. Well, I'll disagree. He is not an eloquent speaker. He's a pompous speaker, and his pompidity shows through everything that he says.
His pompidity?
His pompidity, yes.
You heard it here first, folks.
Pompidity. The other thing, I saw this on the news last night, is they're in France for the D-Day, and last night they had 2 separate dinners. They had one dinner with Obama and the folks, and they had another dinner with Putin and the folks. They didn't have them at the same dinner. Just saying, you know. Just saying.
Not even for D-Day.
Not even for D-Day could they get them together, and having him at something like that is very bothersome to me, because it's such a put-on show for him, you know. And when he talks, it's just, you know, obviously he's taken some public speaking courses, but when you listen to him, there's nothing. There's nothing there.
Right.
All right.
And when there is, you know, he doesn't mean it.
He does. There's nothing there. There's nothing genuine. And we brought this up earlier this year on the show with No Name, both here and on the radio, that he truly, because of his position being as lame a duck as he is, he feels absolutely no responsibility to anybody for any of the things that he does. He doesn't have to. There's no accountability for him, and he just does whatever he thinks without regard to rule of law or morality. Nothing. He doesn't. He's going to go. He has as much respect for the branches of Congress as Andrew Jackson, and I think he was one of the first ones who really tried to put the presidency above the other two, and without a doubt, that's what Obama does. The other 2 branches of government do not mean anything in this country anymore with him as president. It is not. There is no sharing of not only information but of power. There is no respect for the particular jobs that each of the branches have. It's
It's shocking, really.
It is, you know. And if this were Britain, there'd be a
no
a
respect
vote of
for
no
the traditions
confidence.
of the country. Period. Yeah.
No, not at all. You know, we should have, I think, a vote of no confidence, and
and dissolve the government.
dissolve the government.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty much dissolved the government on his own because he is what he is.
Well,
You know, and it has nothing to do with.
It's more like Caligula than anything else you can talk about in modern times.
Yeah, but at least Caligula had interesting parties.
Well, I mean, yeah. Once he put his horse in the Senate, yeah.
You know, well,
Yeah.
Obama's put his jackasses in the Senate.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
it's just awful, the deterioration of the office and the respect. You know,
I could play that clip from Reagan at Normandy over about 200 times in a row and be moved by it every single time. And I can't imagine Obama saying the same words and having that effect because he doesn't mean it.
He would have the same effect. You'd want to move. You would. You'd want to move someplace else. It just, he has no compunction for having an idea, and regardless of the merits, follow through with it. No respect for the opinion of anybody else. Now, even with his own party. You know, I got 2 years left, and by golly, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Almost 3, really. Yeah. Wow. Well.
You know, it just, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Not enough of that.
Yeah. Let's get back to something good.
Yeah.
Have you seen the bridge?
I'm going to save that one for Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Okay, we can do that. We don't want to tip our hand.
I've got. Well,
Save it. Save it.
I made some comments on Facebook that I thought were pretty funny. They'll go over better on the radio.
They do?
I think.
Okay.
The Glover's. Well, never mind. We'll save it for Tuesday.
Don't tip your hand.
Right.
Don't tip
Let's
your
go
hand.
back. Let's go back to World War II. That's where my interest lies today. Reagan. I mentioned earlier, Reagan died 10 years ago yesterday. And Dave Petruccia linked me to a wonderful article about Reagan's funeral that I posted on Facebook, and it reminded both of us. When Reagan died, neither one of us hesitated. We called each other and made arrangements to fly down for the funeral.
Really?
Yeah, we just got on a plane in Albany, flew down, stayed overnight, came back the next day. I think we stayed overnight. We might have come back the same day. I don't even remember, to tell you the truth. Oh, no, because the next day was, we went down for the wake, and the next day was the funeral, so we were there for both. I just stayed 2 nights. I don't know.
You went down.
We went down. Now, there are, I think, hundreds of thousands of people in line, seriously, to go through the Capitol Rotunda.
Mm-hmm.
The line was 6 hours long. It was about 95 degrees and the sun beaten down. And everybody waited patiently in line for 6 hours to file past the beer. And because the line was snaking, we got to talk to a lot of different people, and they were from everywhere. People were just spontaneously doing what we did. It's like he earned this, He earned the respect of our, taking time out from whatever we were doing to come there and stand in line for 6 hours. And they were from all over the country, all walks of life. There were a black family right behind us from Maryland or someplace. Young mother with 3 or 4 little kids. She wanted them to be there for this and to remember it. and it was just great. I mean, whenever wherever the coffin was passing, there were crowds on the street. And so we went up the next day in the rain, and stood outside the cathedral. Nancy went by, and some of these other those crazy people from Westboro Baptist Church who were there, yelling and screaming. But I frankly can't imagine anybody else I would do that for. Well, you maybe, but no. But I mean, aside from a personal friend, is
there anybody? Yeah, is there anybody in this country that you respect like that you'd do that for?
Yeah.
And he did.
I mean, if I was in Washington, I would attend either President Bush's funeral if they were passed away, which they will eventually.
Probably.
But I wouldn't fly down from here.
No.
No. I didn't give it a moment's thought when Gerald Ford died. that was after Reagan.
No.
No. I mean, there just come people in the course of history who make their mark more than others.
Yeah. And with Reagan, he did more than people expected ever would come out of that presidency. He created and crafted a vision, and what he did as president was done to achieve that vision. Yeah. It was not a day-to-day party swing. It was not a day-to-day
right, or check what the polls are saying this morning.
No, he had a very clear vision of where he wanted the country to go, and he crafted the necessary tools to get us there. And
Newt Gingrich tells a great little anecdote because he was a hotshot young backbench congressman when Reagan was president, and he goes in to see him, and he says, "Mr. President," he says, we've got to do this. We got to work on school vouchers. We got to work on this. We got to do it. We got to do this. That's not the head. And he says, "Well, Newt," he says, "I got to leave something for you guys to do."
I'm done. Yeah.
And in a way, it was a joke, but in a way, it was no. We still have the vision. We can't do everything the same day, but we're setting the path.
Yeah, you can't.
The dialogue is going to be about our ideas from now on.
You can't shoot a shotgun. Okay, you gotta have a true scope where you're going to go, because there are particular steps that you have to go to achieve it.
All right.
And you can't do some of those steps out of order.
Right.
And just like, well, I'm going to clean the house today. Well, you do a little here, a little there. At the end of the day, you don't know if you cleaned anything. You got to pick something and focus on it and be successful at that, and then you move on.
You're coming up in my attic afterwards.
Then you can help me with my room afterwards too. Just because I know what to do doesn't mean I do it. Okay.
Maybe it'd be easier if we just exchanged attics. I'll do your attic, you can do my attic, and we'll probably both.
Right, because then I want to go through and see all the things and organize.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Speaking of that, you got a couple of my things still.
What have I got?
You got a picture of the Wheel of Life.
I've still got that?
Yeah, you still got that. And there was another thing I gave you with that.
Well, how the heck did I make a picture of it? Well, it would be the Mohawk catalog that came with it.
Yeah, but then there's also just a picture. You got Guy and.
Oh no, I know the picture. I posted it the other day somewhere, someplace.
I saw that. That reminded me. I said, "Oh, yeah, I know where their picture."
I still got that.
I still got that.
Well,
That's okay.
It's either in the trunk of my car or in my room. But I have set it aside for you on more than one occasion.
All right.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Not
I'm
worried.
going through everything.
I gotta go through mine.
You know what I'm going through now? I found in the attic the other day as I'm cleaning up. I found the Clara Clisby essays from 1887.
Really?
Eighth grader writing about Amsterdam, and they were I've transcribed a few of them, but there's lots of them. What a wonderful writer she was. You know, when I think of how I was writing in 8th grade, and I'm a pretty good writer, nowhere near as polished as this stuff. I mean, her paragraphs are well organized. Her spelling is almost perfect. Her punctuation is perfect, and the organization. You know, sometimes it's five pages or more, and it just moves. I was reading one yesterday about her at 9 years old chasing a rainbow looking for the pot of gold, but first thing in the morning. And it's got so many interesting touches to it. She lived on the Clisby farm, which contained most of Rockton.
Yeah.
You know, all the, McClary and Sanford and Clisby Avenue, obviously,
McNear.
both sides, I believe, that was all their farm. And their farmhouse was up where Highland Gardens is. And she talks about being the farm boy. She thought it was neat being the farm boy, A, because we didn't have a farm boy, and B, because she always liked to consider herself the father's son he never had, or something like that, which I thought an unusual comment, because I know she had a brother, but he may have been that much younger that he wasn't in the picture at the time.
Yeah.
But she was 9 years old, and way before dawn, they milked the cows and then put them out to pasture. So her job at 9 years old was to take the cows out to the pasture and then put the bar on the fence so that they're spread out over those fields that are now Sanford Avenue and Bishop's Gully and all that stuff, right?
And then go get them.
But there is an unusual early morning rainbow in the western sky, and she is going to find that pot of gold and share it with her aunt who told about it, because she wanted the part of the gold as a wedding present. And she's sure it's either landing in the creek or a swamp area, probably the one down by Bartiesel's, where Bartiesel's used to be on Forest Avenue. And so she goes off in search of the end of the rainbow, and is really annoyed when it's not there. And by the time she gets to where she thinks it should be, she's all tuckered out, and then she looks up in the sky and the rainbow's gone. So now she wanders back to the house. What am I going to? She figured if she came home with a pot of gold, nobody would care that she had disappeared for a couple hours. And it's only now just dawn. It's finally after 6 o'clock in the morning. Wow, great stuff. And she doesn't tell her mother about it till years later. So she gets home and just pretends she was sick, and they put her to bed for a while.
That's a kid.
It's absolutely charming. Anyway, there's a lot of that stuff, and I haven't come across the one about her walking from her house on Clisby and Church Street down into the village, or to the city. The city was brand new at that time. She does say there are 16,000 people living in Amsterdam at the time, which is a population very similar to ours, and ever growing. Ever growing.
I suppose ever declining.
She describes the mills, and there's a great story about her going to visit a friend 2 miles distant, probably up around Manny's Corners, and they end up the next morning going with there's like 6 of them, including the mother of her friend, and they start going cross fields through areas that are long abandoned in the town of Amsterdam. An old stone quarry where the blacksmith shop is still there, and all the tools are still laid out. And it's apparently in 1887, it's been abandoned for 50 years or something at that point. And then there's a steam-powered sawmill they come across that's also abandoned, and eventually they break out to the road near Cranes Hollow and stop for some candy at a store in Cranesville and walk home from there. But it sounds like an all-day hike across the fields and woods and swamps. And
great adventure.
Wow, so neat. First-hand too. Anyway, it's about time, right?
That's 12 o'clock.
Have I even mentioned that this is the show with no name, and I'm Bob Going, and this is Gavin Murdoch. We'll be back with a radio show on Tuesday, and I think next Friday we're still good for another show. Yeah. Right here on the show with no name.